this is Rick. Welcome to Warriors Respite. Today I want to talk about the Gone Girl case that happened in 2015. I just watched the American Nightmare case that came out, the docuseries that came out on Netflix. And I thought this was an interesting case. It definitely talks about police failure and triumph. Definitely highlights how there are good and bad police, which is kind of scary in its own right. And definitely points out the failures of our nation in helping those who have been victim to sexual assault. Please find me on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Twitter, Facebook, or X, TikTok, all that good stuff. So, basically, if you haven't watched this, spoilers ahead, obviously. Good idea to check out the docu-series before you come check this out. It is very interesting. I think it is American dramatized, just like if you watched my Natalie Speaks, The Curious Case of Natalie rundown, and Opinionated Piece, same thing, very Americanized. If you can't see, there's a cat in my lap, so I gotta be careful with my coffee because he wants to rub his head against it. So basically, Quinn in the morning after something happened, supposedly he's calling the police. He told investigators that a group of intruders come in. They were wearing scuba gear. It was in the middle of the night. They had taser guns. They bound him with zip ties inside a closet. They blindfolded him. They put on blackout goggles. And they kidnapped Denise, and they demanded $8,500 ransom, and so they gave him instructions and kept him kind of on edge all night, and so they brought Quinn in, well, it's Aaron, Quinn's his last name. They brought Aaron into the police station, and they just rammed him for hours, just interrogated him. After a while, it came apparent to him that they were not questioning him about the case. They were questioning him as a suspect. They just all of a sudden were not even, like, it just pisses me off already. They weren't even entertaining the idea that someone else was guilty. Apparently, they found blood in the house. Apparently, they just did not believe that somebody came in wetsuits and kidnapped her, and they tortured him. Here's the thing. This guy has been traumatized all night. Apparently, they put sedatives in his mouth and made him drink NyQuil. So he was out of it, and he's worried about Denise, and it's just really messed up. And then they just emotionally abuse him. I guess they put him through a lie detector test, and they're just like, you failed the lie detector test. So they completely, apparently, lie to him. And the police will do this. I know that because they did it to me during a case. The police will flat out lie. So, if you are being interrogated, just know the police will flat out lie to you. Always have a lawyer. But he finally says, I think I need a lawyer. Because he's like bawling. And he's like, I think I need a lawyer, dude. And they finally stop. Because they can't go any further. But I already know these police officers are effing trash. Because they don't even entertain the idea, like, oh, let's just trust the police. The people who call you for help, you're just gonna accuse and abuse. Seriously, dude. And so a couple days later, well, I guess Denise called. Someone got a phone call that said, "I'm fine. I've been kidnapped," and she sounds cool as a clam, so they just assume maybe Denise is setting this up. So now they're accusing Denise. Uh, so then she was dropped off 400 miles away to her childhood home. And she comes back. And the police want to talk to her. Aaron wants to talk to her. And the police just assume she made up the whole story. And the second episode, Denise gets a chance to talk. She tells her side of the story. Because all of a sudden, people are saying the media is just as trash. I do not watch media. I do not watch Fox. I do not watch CNN, MSNBC, local news. They are all garbage. Because they all accuse her of copying the Gone Girl movie that came out the year before. If you haven't seen Gone Girl's basically a Ben Affleck movie where his wife stages a kidnapping after Ben Affleck cheated on her. Which is interesting because when they aged up Natalia from my podcast, last podcast, Natalia Grace, they didn't accuse the mom of copying Orphan, but now they're accusing Denise, which we'll talk about, who's been sexually assaulted, of copying Gone Girl. So Denise finally gets a chance to talk in this docuseries. Been taken away in this Mustang. She's in the trunk. She's thinking, we're driving in traffic. It's morning traffic. People are going to work. And the person going to work doesn't know there's a woman blindfolded in the trunk in the car next to her. Which I heard or I seen a meme the other day that's like, people don't realize the person next to you in the car next to you is the star in their own movie and you're all supporting characters to them. She's taken to this house, this cabin, and basically there's one guy that's with her, and she's basically made to stay in this room blindfolded, and the guy that's with her, I guess he's kind of humanized, talking about he has PTSD and he's a veteran, which makes me sick as a veteran. He tells her this was not the way it was supposed to go. He was hired to kidnap Quinn's ex-girlfriend, which was Andrea. Now, this is interesting because we don't find out what that was all about. They kidnapped the wrong woman. This guy was hired. We don't find any of this out. What the hell? So, he I guess he's really nice to her and walks her to the bathroom frequently and feeds her and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, he says, well, we're going to let you go eventually, but we don't have any collateral that you won't go to the police. So one of us will have sex with you. And I'm sorry, it's going to have to be me. We'll have to videotape it, and if you go to the police, we're going to have to release the tape. So he rapes her, and she disconnects herself from it. Yada yada yada, which was terrible. And first of all, that's a complete lie. He eventually does it again and says we need to make it believable. We need to tape your eyes shut because we need to make it look like you're enjoying it. And he puts he has wine there and everything, and he leaves the room and she chugs the wine, and he goes, "Oh, you started without me?" And she is like thinking, "You're not gonna break me, you a-hole." And so he rapes her again, and then eventually he drops her off at her parents' house, and he tells her that, "Hey, you tell anybody, you tell the police or anything that we had sex, then we're coming after your families." Well, she sees the news, what's going on, and she realizes that they're all accusing her of making this up. She realizes she needs a lawyer. Then she goes back, gets a lawyer. She gets a rape kit test done showing that this happened, but the police still don't believe her. So she's on trial. So there's another case of a home entry where this same guy tries to break in to this young girl's house, and the parents fight him off, and the police come and they find zip ties and stuff, and he left a cell phone there, and they tracked the cell phone to his mom, and the mom says, "Well, he's been staying at a Lake Tahoe cabin." So they go to the Lake Tahoe cabin, find him, and they find out he went to law school. They find out he was a veteran, and they find out that he had Gulf War syndrome and stuff like that. Now, I believe this guy was using PTSD and Gulf War syndrome as an excuse to rape women. This dude, I hate that, because I do see veterans using PTSD as an excuse. Listen, I know PTSD makes you do some stupid shit, but like me, even at my worst with PTSD, I try to stay out of everybody's way and not cause harm to people. But like, it does not make me want to have forced sex on people. Like, you can keep from forcing sex on people. It just seems to me like use that as an excuse to force sex on women. He's like, "I have PTSD. Like, there's more to it, dude. You're not being sexually aggressive because you have PTSD. That's an excuse." I would like to add, not from combat stress, maybe from some kind of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse often people act out, especially if they've been sexually abused from when they were a child. But that's still not an excuse to sexually abuse somebody else. Like, if you were going to say, "I sexually abused somebody because I was sexually abused," I am never gonna sit there and go, "Okay, that's a great excuse." I'm never gonna say that's a good reason to victimize somebody. But they also found toy guns that had been spray painted, and zip ties, and all this crazy stuff, sedatives, and NyQuil and stuff like that. But they eventually find a strand of blonde hair, and the female detective on the case that's in that area says, I am dedicated to finding whose strand of blonde hair this is. And eventually she finds out it's Denise's. And so she connects it to Denise, but they pass on, the Vallejo police pass on the case to the FBI, and the FBI finally realized they had it wrong the whole time. This wasn't a fake Gone Girl case, you freaking idiots. They were telling the truth. And it's funny, so the FBI just believed the Vallejo police. They didn't even look into it. This was a failure by the local police and the federal police. Luckily, we had one or a couple police officers that were dedicated to finding this woman and figuring out who that hair belonged to, making sure she was safe. Because they were going to put a woman who was kidnapped and raped in prison. And she was sexually assaulted before at a party. She talked about how she was at a party and somebody forced themselves upon her. I'm not going to get into detail. And she tried to go to the police, and they said nothing's going to happen. She was talked out of going to the police about it. Let me backtrack. This guy, the same guy in the same city that was peeping into college kids' windows who were, I don't know if they were getting naked or having sex, but it stopped when Denise got kidnapped. But they arrested him, and he never told who hired him, if there was anybody else involved, and the police never pursued it, which is disgusting to me, because there was obviously other people involved. It just sounds like laziness to me. But I've been sexually assaulted. As a kid, I've been sexually assaulted by women and men. As a kid, as a grown man, I've been sexually assaulted. Sexual assault, sexual abuse is something different, because I've been physically abused, I've been emotionally abused. And there is a difference between all three. I think this is what makes me such a good therapist. And I believe I am a good therapist. I've been through it all. Sexual abuse is something that becomes glued onto you. It becomes glued onto your eyes and becomes glued onto your soul. And it's hard to unstick. Once you see it, once you feel it, it's something that lingers. Lingering's not even the right word, because it's overpowering and overbearing. It does not become unglued. You try pulling away, but it's still there. And you get this feeling, just this disgusting feeling with it. See, I'm strong enough to push people away when it happens. I don't know why people think I'm okay with it, but I'm not. And I can definitely understand what it's like, because I'm an empath, but I can't fully understand what it's like for a woman to be overpowered and controlled by somebody who's threatening to kill them in this position, and then have to live with this the rest of their life, and then be told by random people on Facebook and Twitter or whatever that you're a whore, and then told by the local police that you're going to prison. And apparently the lieutenant in the police station said, this bitch is wasting our resources, burn her down or something like that. This is ridiculous. So, in my view, when you're in something like law enforcement, you're supposed to be objective. You're not supposed to have an opinion based on feeling. Your opinion's supposed to be based on facts. You haven't had all the facts yet. And here's my thing also. These police officers and these detectives come in and say 95% of cases like this are done by the boyfriend or whatever. Yeah, well, there's 5% that's not. So you can't make your decision based off of what 95% or even what 99% is based off of. Because this is not those other cases. No case is the same. I can't say one patient is like 99% of the other patients. I gotta treat every single patient differently. And I've run into that wall where I'm like, oh, this sounds familiar, but then I've screwed up because this is a different person. And I gotta treat it like a different person. You gotta treat each case differently. I'm not a police officer, but like from the outside looking in, I'm seeing injustice done left and right, failures done left and right. I don't really care if I'm not in your position. I'm paying you. My money is going to you. I want to see proper justice being done. Resources is being wasted trying to put this poor traumatized woman and traumatized man in jail because you watch too many movies. We see this stuff over and over again. Just failures of certain government agencies. And they don't apologize. They don't get punished. It's narcissistic. They get rewarded. They get awards. And they get to continue taking our money. There is something evil. If my wife got kidnapped and raped, and I went to the police about it, and the police started abusing and accusing me, instead of actually solving the crime, after I spent years paying for their pension. That sounds fucking evil. That is terrible. That's evil. That is trash. You want to know why I don't trust politicians? Why I don't trust government? When I was working, and let's see here, 15, 16, 17 years government worker. I worked for the federal agencies. I remember when I worked in federal pen, worked in prisons for 4 or 5 years. I said something about going to the police, which is the wrong thing to say to an inmate, of course. They laughed at me. Yeah, I'm going to go to the police. We don't trust the police. Why don't you trust the police? How could you not trust the police? Because the police is going to come in, start arresting the people that called them. Listen, I know there's good police out there. I know it. I absolutely know it. I am not just spitting on all police. And I know it's a tough job. I can relate because I was an infantryman in Afghanistan. Not quite the same, but there's similarities in it. But also, I don't believe a police officer is driving around in their car looking at everybody in the world thinking, I gotta protect all these people. I think they're sitting there in the car thinking any one of these people could be the enemy. How can I fuck any of these people over today? Not all police officers. Somebody is. It's crazy. Somebody is. Somebody's doing that. I have no reason to call the police at my house if someone's breaking in. Hey, thanks for listening. Please check out my other podcast, Spit Take Podcast, and please continue listening to Warriors Respite. Please comment, tell me your thoughts. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Tell me your thoughts there. Find me on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, TikTok, and give me more of your thoughts. Tell me about your ideas, failures of our system and sexual assault, or whether your ideas of how we solve the problem of sexual assault or faking sexual assault, or maybe I'm way off and maybe we believe everybody. I don't know. Thanks for listening, and stay mangled and strangled and